again. My name is Supreet. I'm a gender advocate and a filmmaker. And we just showcased some films from United Nations Alliance for Civilization's Youth Film Festival from across all the countries. India was one of them. We are now going to have discussion with some brilliant filmmakers who are not only making mainstream cinema in India, but they also have a lot of their films that lead to social change. They are addressing stereotypes and barriers of gender equality and safety. So with that, let me just invite everyone, because I know everyone wants to go out and enjoy some more things of Kala Ghoda. So let me invite Rashmi Lamba first. Rashmi has over 40 years experience in film and television production. Come. Yeah, it just happens I have to be on this side. Film festivals, advertising, social and corporate communication. After decades of working in international production houses and advertising companies, she set up her own film and TV production company in India, Dubai and Canada. Rashmi launched the Fiki Flow Film Festival. She spearheaded Mumbai Film Mart and MIF Hub for documentaries. And she's currently the India Council Chair for Geena Davis Institute on Gender and Media. Thank you, Rashmi, for coming here. Our next panelist is Manjushree Patil. She's the founder-director of Aatman Academy, an inclusive learning program for children with diverse needs. She's a classical singer and teacher, and she has led initiatives such as year-long statewide program on inclusive education with the government of Maharashtra. She performs Hindustani vocal music since the age of 3. Wow. She composes music as well for a lot of social issues, and she composed music for 5 ghazals on the theme of gender-based violence, which I wrote, and we performed on that last year in Kala Ghoda. So thank you, Manju. Our next panelist is Kireet Khurana. He's a writer, producer, and director who has won 6 President's National Awards and 16 international awards for his cinematic works, besides many others. He has made over 25 award-winning short films on social causes, including films for National Film Board of Canada, UNICEF, Childline, USAID, John Hopkins, Save the Children. Okay, the list goes on, okay? But for some of you who probably come for my generation or our generation, do you guys remember, I have to say this, Kireet. Ek chidiya, anek chidiya. Do you remember that? Okay, so the founder of animation, Indian animation, Mr. Bhim Sen made that, and Kireet is his son. Our next panelist is Gia Singh Arora, who just walked in a little back. So I don't think she saw the films, but she's the youngest one on the panel. She's a Mumbai-based independent filmmaker and performance artist whose work explores gender, sexuality, desire, and intimacy. Drawing from her background in movement and dance, Gia uses innovative storytelling techniques to bring untold stories to life. So thank you, Gia, for making time. And a lot of us were wanting to go, and she actually came from the Pride Walk, which is also happening at the same time. So some of us are hoping that we go back after this, we go and join them. Our last panelist today is a very dear friend, Insia Dariwala. Insia is an award-winning filmmaker and child rights activist. She's a TEDx speaker and a creative campaign strategist who effectively uses her 20 years of expertise in visual medium to highlight various social issues through various art forms. Today, apart from her media venture, she also runs 2 non-profits that deal with children and child rights issues. So thank you, Insia. And what was beautiful was that there were children there who have made these films, right? Some of them on stereotypes and breaking barriers. And you never thought it happens anywhere other than our own homes or our own country. And now you realize it's happening in Spain. I mean, Iran is unfortunate and very sad what's happening in Afghanistan. So my first question to all of you is a very common one. It's about what struck you watching these films. And Gia, you can answer the second part of the question. So, what struck you, what stood out for you in these films, and how do you relate to it as a filmmaker who's trying also to voice these issues in your own country? So I think, Kireet, you have the mic. I'll start with you.
Okay, so I think what struck me is that the world is round, that the problems that we face, gender issues that we face over here, the patriarchy that we face over here is manifesting in different forms, different ways, but it's pretty much the same. Of course, in the West, the discrimination is a little bit more subtle, or at least not as aggravated as it is in Ghana. We also have FGM in Africa. We have a lot of issues. So somewhere it is manifests in physical violence. Of course, it manifests in physical violence everywhere in USA, in the Western countries as well. But still, the laws are not favoring. I think the laws are pretty stringent in the West. If a woman needs to seek help, then maybe she can seek help and rescue herself from the situation at least, and seek mental health counseling. But I think it's a perpetual war for other women in Ghana, in Africa, a lot of the rural areas in India. And what struck me in all of those films is the ray of hope that the Indian film was talking about. I mean, I thought that was great because we saw some real empowerment when women get together as self-help groups. I think it's a fantastic empowerment that happens there. And I think I've seen that because I've made a lot of films in the rural sector on various social issues and causes. And that was a film that was a ray of hope and a beacon of, prosperity or happiness there. So that was very, very sort of good for me in that sense.
Thanks, Kireet. Rashmi, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I think for me, also, as I said, the privilege of having actually even met some of these young filmmakers at the award function this year, because I had the privilege of being there. And I think what came through was the fact that, whenever we make films, you have to be aware first of who are you making it for and why, and who is your target audience. And the beauty of this Plural Plus festival that I found when I was introduced it for the first time, thanks to Supreet, was that they've got 3 age groups, which is right from 5 to 25, and they've divided them into 3 age groups. And the films that have been made on gender-based violence or other topics, there is a certain authenticity to them because there is an innocence and there's an emotion that the children and the youngsters bring to these films, and the fact that the message is being put through to their peer group, which is very important. So that was something that as the jury we all noticed, that you can actually use all kinds of techniques. You can use animation, you can use graphics, you can use... So the causes, of course, are universal, the problems are universal. That is what is something that comes through when you talk to all the children, the young filmmakers. But I think what is very important for me is the fact that the films are being targeted to the right audience. And there is hope, as Kireet says, that we can discuss these, talk about them, and the fact that the youngsters are taking note and expressing themselves in their own way. It's not adults talking down to them or telling them what to do and how to do and don't do, you should do. We're not doing that. So for me, the power of film in the hands of these youngsters is wonderful because they're using it so brilliantly. So for me, that was very important.
Thanks, Rashmi. Manju, I know, the question is same, but also because music, right? And we also had music in between. So how would what struck you?
That's my teacher voice. So I think I feel quite I don't know, I have no words to say. You guys are such illustrious filmmakers, and I come from the education space, so I saw these films from my lens, and as an educator, as a teacher, as someone who's worked in the space of disability education and inclusion, one of the most beautiful things I liked about this, Supreet, was I particularly liked the children's films, because within the disability space, we always use the phrase, nothing about me without me. And that was something that was really beautifully established in all these films. And the other thing I really want to agree with what Rashmi mentioned just now is, like, we say that diversity is having a place at the table, inclusion is having a voice, and belongingness comes only when that voice is being heard. And these films are a proof of the fact that their voices are being heard. Coming to your question of music, all I can say was these were just perfect pieces. I mean, they were there, they were making our emotions, stirring our emotions, but they were not in your face. So every film that we saw, the music just took us into the storyline or into the thought that was being shared through the film. The music just helped us go further and further into it. And I was like this at one point of time. I couldn't see it. I was cringing. Because I'm not a filmmaker, but I'm a film viewer. And if that's what these films are doing, I think they've achieved what they had aimed.
Thank you, Manju. And that's very beautiful, right? To also hear from the point of view of somebody who's just absorbing it and who doesn't know what goes behind probably creating these visuals. But if the message is actually reaching you and you're cringing at it, or you're getting overwhelmed, or it's giving you goosebumps, I think rightly said, I mean, the films have kind of met the reason why they're there. Insia.
So, as someone who works in the space of children so much, I was just blown away by the films, because I believe storytelling is so powerful and we do not give enough voice to children. So when we talk about working on child rights issues, we never ask the children, what do you want? So this is a wonderful platform to bring forth a child's voice, and also then to impact the audience, because I feel that every person here in this room has the power in themselves to probably take something from here and go and put it out there in society, right? Maybe you might have been so impacted by it that you might go and talk about it to somebody, and that's how, messages are carried. So while there was a lot of despair, I feel that there was so much hope, to see a child that is 8 and 9 and brilliant scripts. As a filmmaker, I think their storytelling abilities, like they could put mainstream people to shame, I felt. So yeah, amazing, really lovely.
Thanks. And that's true, right? And in such a short span of time, if they're actually making you get overwhelmed, I mean, some of them are like 8 years old, the kids who have made this. So as filmmakers, it also makes us very happy that filmmaking is in hands of people, of kids who are actually understanding short format before the long format. And short format is actually difficult. For Kireet also makes a lot of ad films, and Gia also does. And we know that short formats are very difficult to get your message across. But this has been brilliant. And let's hear from somebody who's closer to that generation than we are. Gia?
Guys, I'm hardly that close anymore. First, I just feel bad I did miss the films. I just want to say that. I think what's really beautiful about children making films is the fact that their voice is going to be perhaps a little bit more honest than ours. And that I think as we grow old, we kind of have so many barriers that kind of keep coming up in our heads as to what is the kind of story we can tell and how will it be received. And I think the beautiful part about a child perhaps making any kind of art, including a film, is the fact that they perhaps don't care who even watches it, and I think it becomes a really beautiful, personal, it has the ability to be personal, and I think that's where the possibility of even I don't really want to say like a healing, but a possibility to address some things that you might have in you, I think becomes palpable and real. So, yeah.
Thanks, Gia. And you know, what stood out for me in these films was the allyship. Every film had a man who was somewhere instigating a change, like that little girl who wants to be a doctor, and they've been told girls cannot study beyond a certain age, and the brother is actually the one, you know, and she leaves it unsaid because now the people with the guns who are imposing no education for girls have found her pictures. You don't know what's going to happen next, and you can think about it, or you can read in the newspapers. We get to know of enough stories nowadays, but that is what stood out. So you cannot have only women fighting for women's rights, or only the LGBTIQ community, because today is the Pride March. Also, let's talk about them, that they can fight for themselves. They need allies. And if men and boys stand up with the rest of the 50% of the population of the world, I'm sure equality is not very far, or safety for that matter. So brings me to you, Rashmi, because you have almost 4 decades of work, right? And you have worked on documentaries on figures like Ravi Shankar, Mother Teresa. So how have these early experiences shaped your work thereafter? Because I know a lot of your work is addressing social issues.
I think since we're talking about children, I was very fortunate that I think my very first assignment was on a children's program on Doordarshan, and that was at that time the only English program. It was called Magic Land. And it was an adaptation of what everybody now knows thanks to internet as Sesame Street. So, you know, when you talk about allyship and the role modeling, Sesame Street has Ernie and Bert, and we had Alu and Pulu. And Alu was the creative guy who could make mistakes, and Pulu was the girl. But she was the perfectionist. And she'd been modeled on her birth sign, which is Virgo, like, but anyway. So what my very first experience was the amount of care and research that you have to do when you are addressing children, because each character in that program or in Sesame Street is very, very well defined. And that is then the role model. And as you mentioned, my recent interactions with the Geena Davis Institute, and what inspired me for the Geena Davis Institute was the fact that Geena Davis had come up with a mantra when she was bringing up a 6-year-old and didn't see enough role models on television, and she came up saying, if she can see it, she can be it. Which means if you have good role models in the characters that are created on screen or off screen, the girls can aspire to be that, right? So in the process of my learning on varied formats that I've had the ability to work on, I think, and the allyship that you spoke about, you know, Alu Pulu had a great friendship, which was full of caring, and you know, she would be there for him, whereas Alu would be there. So right from and the fact that the children also participated in these programs, because we had a lot of kids on the show, so they would interact with these characters. So the storytelling that we're talking about was very important, you know, because there was a lot of, I would say, creativity right from then, and we too had a lot of kids doing work. Coming to the documentaries, the one on Mother Teresa is something that I think to date, I saw that film over and over and over and over again, because it was also, you had to make prints, film prints. So each print you had to see, you know. But the fact that a woman could have so much compassion and achieve so much for humanity was something, you know, that also shaped me. That I was 18 at that time. But I think as we progress, what has worked for me is the variety of subjects that I've been able to work on. And the changes that one has been seeing is that Doordarshan, however we call it now, very low end, no one sees it, had iconic programs. It had iconic women on and off screen. And then in, I think, the satellite television that came in, we saw the regressive Sasnavu, Sindhu brigades that came. But now OTT, I think, has maybe gone to the other extreme, right? Because we've got the badass women who are emulating the men, maybe, you know, with the whole, I would say, abusive language, violence. So for me, the learning curve, as you asked, has been the fact that it just has always had me thinking about the roles, the gender roles, the representation. And so that's what's attracted me to work not in fiction, but in, I would say, real storytelling of all formats. And even the festivals that I managed to work on have always been about, I would say, the skilling, the interactions between filmmakers to further understand the process. And I still hope I'm learning.
Thank you so much, Rashmi. He's really standing there to tell you your mic was not working throughout. I didn't want to stop you because you
That was my elocution voice, sorry. Yeah, not your teacher voice. Sorry.
So so I didn't realize it till the time he stood there and he kept on
I'm
staring
sorry.
at your mic.
You should have just disturbed me anyway. Sorry about that.
No, but we could hear you, right? You all could hear her. Yeah, so women have nice, you know, high-pitched voices now, like you said. We have changed, right, over years. We are no more submissive and quiet and meek. So thanks, Rashmi, for that. And I think it's very important to understand, you started at a very young age, right? And taking that as my segue, I'm going to come to Kireet, who grew up in a family where people were making films way before he was probably born. And so it's clearly, you know, you all heard what Mr. Bhim Sen, his father, made. We all have grown up on those. Not all of us. You clearly don't know about that. But my question to you is, Kireet, you know, you've been working on many ad films. You've won so many national awards. Your narrative films often deal with tough social realities. Yeah. So what inspires you to address such topics, and how do you balance your commercial filmmaking while also doing this? Because I know you do short format as well.
Yeah, so first is, where is it coming from? Obviously, it's coming from my father, who was making these films on inclusivity and diversity, and those were the themes that were predominant during the 70s and 80s, because India was a very diverse country, and what really was holding India together was the fact that there was a lot of films coming on Doordarshan which were talking about unity and diversity, and that was a theme that the government then wisely thought was a way to go forward to build a narrative and to build a thread for, you know, the Northeast and the Kerala and Gujarat and, you know, the various diverse cultures. For me, I think, so the fact that I need to say something important in the films, and the films cannot just be films are for entertainment, but just not for that. I mean, it has to be beyond that, and that is important. So that was a very predominant need for me, and the real challenge was, how do you make films on various social causes? Like, I've done films on child rights, on human rights, and social justice, and social entrepreneurship, and many other things, right? So I figured early in my career, in the mid-90s, I figured that I will not be able to make the films that I want to make, and I won't be able to have the voice that I want until unless I have the funds for it. And if I go out asking funds for people, like I just finished a documentary on the homeless, I won't get it. In fact, now the documentary on the homeless is ready. None of the big channels are even willing to take it for free, you know. So they are not willing to put it up on their channels and their platforms, and so I just put it on YouTube for everybody to see. So it became important for me to figure out how I'm going to raise funds, and therefore we work on what is called a cross-subsidy model, which is that I sell my soul to the devil when I make advertising films, and then I reclaim my soul by, you know, making films, short films and social cause films. Even my feature films have some social message. So that's really how it works for me, because I mean, there's no other way one can actually work. Yes, some of the films are commissioned films by NGOs, and some of them you do find an odd angel investor or somebody who wants to make a film on a certain theme, and they are enamored by your work and they just want to give you the funds. But those are very few and far between. So if you really want to continuously make funds, then you need a lot of money, and you need to therefore make the money somewhere else. And so advertising has been the means for me.
Thanks. And do you think your social messages kind of find their way into the ad films you make? Do you kind of bring in inclusivity?
No,
or
no,
something?
no, there is no scope there. There's absolutely no scope there, absolutely, because the script comes to you from the agency and the agenda is very clear. How do you increase the sales, or how do you increase the brand, or how do you enhance the brand, or whatever the objective of the film is. So whether it is services or products, you have to really focus on what is good for the brand and how you're going to be doing your job best there. So there is no scope there, but in certain cases where we're working directly with clients, like we just did something for Urban Company, and we made a film on the history of plumbing. The history of plumbing right from Dholavira. Dholavira was the first time in 5,000 years ago that actually plumbing started. So it started from the Harappa civilization and then how the world adopted. So we wrote the script. It has a strong social message where it humanizes the profession, and it makes the profession very important, because when you're talking to a plumber, you're looking down upon the, you're usually looking at the plumber as an unimportant person who's just going to pay 300-500 rupees and he'll come and fix your flush or do something and then just leave. But how important their profession is, how to instill a pride in the plumbers if they're watching the film, how to make them feel important, that their profession is extremely important, and how the others who are actually employing the plumber, how they need to look at their profession as well. So that is something that is it's called social responsibility, whatever you call it, is something that we embedded in the script. But many times you're actually selling products and services that you hate. Okay. Many a times this is not a good product, this is not a healthy product, but that the only, I think, solace or comfort you can take out of it is this film will get done even if you don't do it. So you might as well do it and use the money for some good cause. So that's the only reason why I do the ad films, and I do for really terrible products, but I have to go there and I have to pitch in a very convincing way. Yeah, this is the best thing to happen to humanity, kind of thing. So yeah, that inauthenticity, like I said, selling your soul to the devil, that is important. And so then how you reclaim that?
Thanks, and I think that's true. That's
so
why
yeah, advertising is all about overselling any which ways.
He's a good actor as well. Not just
most of the directors are very good actors, but most of the actors are not good directors. So, no, thanks for that, Kireet. I think that's very true, and which is why I think we all try to find different ways or different means of earning a living while we are doing what we are doing or trying to do, right? And it becomes all the more difficult. And that brings me to you, Insia. So, what I want to understand from you, Insia, is, you've actually employed diverse creative mediums, right? You've used photography, you've used puppetry and animation in films. So, and street plays as well, right? So, I want to understand, you use these to address child abuse issues and female genital cutting.
Right.
So, one, how did you manage to use all of these, and do you have any one rewarding moment when you made this? I know you also released your short film, but has there been a moment while you were making these films that stays with you and kind of inspires you to move on and make another one?
So to address the first part of your question, which is how, there's a word that we use very often in India, it's called jugaad, right? So jugaad means you just make it happen. And the reason why I utilize so many different formats, right from photo campaigns to puppetry animation to street plays, the medium of films, is because at every given point of time, it was the pocket that was deciding, okay, I am not getting funds to do a film, so let me see how else I can make an impact. And what I discovered in that journey is that, like you said, allyship is so important. And I met amazing people along this journey. Like my puppetry animation video, which is on creating awareness for child abuse, was a collaboration with Pearl Academy. And I mentored their students and, taught them how to write scripts. And in return, they gave me a film, which is today something that I use in schools and colleges. It's an age-appropriate film. If you guys can just check it out. It's on YouTube. It's called Tara and Raju. And it's about a brother and sister having a conversation about how to personal safety education, basically, made a little fun. Now, in the journey of making films, I also feel that, I didn't choose to make these films. Those films chose me. And my first film, like I was in hardcore advertising too. I mean, this is a little known fact. I used to be a copywriter. And I was a copywriter in New York for many years. I came here, again, copywriting. SL World was my campaign. And post that, I just decided, after my first TVC for SL World, I said, I want to get into films. And that's how I went into Bollywood. Stayed there, worked as a script consultant, went into television, worked for your mom actually. I wrote Radha Ki Betiya. And then one day it just hit me that I want to do something that is very different now. I wanted to get that satisfaction, just like what Kireet was saying, right? You do a lot of things because you need to run your home. And then sometimes you want to do something that's creating an impact. And that's when my first film on child sexual abuse happened, The Candyman, where I decided to talk about male child sexual abuse. When I made that film, Supreet, that was actually a game changer for my journey as an activist. Because I discovered along the way that we are always talking about girls and women, but there is no voice who can talk about boys being raped and abused. And that's a very big reality in our country. We have 50% of our children who are boys who have been sexually abused. So that's when I decided to do the photo campaign on male child sexual abuse. And the defining moment, or that one milestone that always stays with me, is the impact that 5 men who came out with their stories had on a legislation in India, where up until that point, everything to do with victim compensation scheme was not gender neutral. And thanks to that photo campaign and a change.org petition, it went on to change legislation and make it gender neutral. So the power of any format when it comes to art is very, very huge, I think. So I just tapped into that. And many milestones, that's just something that I like to talk about because that was the beginning of my journey in this space.
No, I think that's beautiful, and I know Insia for a very long time. And I think your journey, I have seen your journey from then to now, and every time you make something new, you are so impacted or influenced or inspired by something you notice while you're making it, that it takes you on another journey somewhere else. So, and for those who think painters can only be painters and filmmakers should only be filmmakers, it doesn't work like that. You can write books, you can sketch, you can paint, you can make films, you can do photography. So
I just got published as an author. I mean, my poetry book got released, so yeah, I agree.
So, yes, so there are many ways of expressing or putting across your message, and you have an audience for every form of art who wants to absorb it. So my next question to Gia is, your work delves into themes of gender, sexuality and intimacy. And you actually use different mediums again, whether it's dance, whether it's your body speaking, whether it's breaking the fourth wall. So can you share how this has kind of also helped you express what you want to say to your audiences?
I was just actually thinking when everyone was talking that sometimes like what you want to say doesn't necessarily have to be, especially in a film I can talk about, doesn't necessarily have to be through words or the story, perhaps. There are so many different things happening in a film, so many different mediums within the film itself that can be used to say what you want. And I think when it comes to, I mean, I am a movement artist and a dancer, performer, and I was trained in classical dance as a child, but now it's taken very, very different shape. And I think once you understand what is movement, what is dance, what is music, what does it do, what can it do, I think you can try to understand how it can be used perhaps to say something else altogether. You know, form, the way form is used also says something. And I think that's something I try to tap into more, because I have a personal problem sometimes with like being too direct and saying it to my face. Like especially in a film, I feel like, okay, but what's next now? So in a film, if you gol ghumao me thoda sa and then you get to it, then like, you know, I'm in it in a very different way. And with breaking the fourth wall, I think it's initially when you're young, it's kind of tough for you to understand the difference between like you making a film and there's a story that happens as you're making it, and then there's a story of the film. And then I was like, oh no, but my story, like where is that? You know, and I wanted to kind of find a way to intermingle the two. So there's a film that I made called Innocence that is about a mid-30s woman's experience of child sexual abuse. And she really wanted to make the film. So she found me, and when we were trying to figure out how we can tell the story, something that struck me was that movement and body is the best way to tell a story that's about the body. And how can she and I receive something from the process of making the film and not just the end result? Because what we're talking about here is like, it's a lot, it's painful, it's tough. Some of the questions that come up are also like, why do we make a film on this? Like, it's already worse enough that it's happening and it's happened. Why do you want to do this all over again? And so the only way I could find out was to do it through movement, and create a workshop space where over 3 days we would film, and created a kind of perhaps games and exercises and things through which to kind of explore what she actually thinks about it now, not what she thinks about it, you know. And sometimes our physicality responds to things and memories in a very different way. And so I intercut the film with what the story was and now what she feels about it. And that's how like even the idea of filming the process of making the film kind of felt powerful to me, because eventually, like, sure, I made the film, but it's her film, you know, and we had a lot of interesting debates about this as well at the end, because she was like, but it's your name, you know, when it's your, yeah, you know, and these are conversations you have to have, because you're working with, in some cases, a community or a person or a story, and you need to understand, like, it's not my story, and how am I going to open my arms up to receive it? And how am I going to try to make something out of what it is and not what I like want it to be? Yeah.
Thank you. I think you know, I would want you to quickly, I know she's been showing me time from there, but, and I always have so many questions, and probably you want to know so much more, but I will need to go to the final question. But before that, I just want you to share a little bit about your next docu on drag queens.
Yes, so I'm trying to develop, over the last year and a half, a documentary on a chosen family of drag queens based in Bombay, which is why today I was also filming with them, because they're also doing a show tonight at Antisocial. If you all want to come and watch at 9 p.m, you all should.
So give Gia's name, you'll get free entry and 1 drink on the house.
No, not the drink, but I'll get you in for sure. So I've been spending just for like the sake of transparency perhaps, because we're also talking about what it means to be an ally, is that I'm like a straight human. I'm from Bombay. I don't share the world they share. They've come to Bombay. They've created a family for themselves. And I met them perhaps 2.5 years ago. And it's taken me this long to actually be an ally. Not that I entered without being an ally. You always enter a space believing you know what you're going to do in there. But like, I just have to say, it's always like, I think a long journey to really understand something like before you make it. And I feel it's very easy to say we're an ally, but like, can you actually empathize and embody like something that perhaps they're going through, or something as simple as an everyday? Like, can you do that? Like, and I think as a maker of anything, I think if you're going to be crossing that line into a space that you don't know and you're not familiar with, how important that is to like sort of take your time to do that. I could have easily finished the film and made a film about like, woohoo, pride, you know, it's really easy to see the picture from the outside, but I think it takes a lot of guts and effort to like really go in and understand it, and then understand what you really want to make. So it's something I'm trying to put together, and I'm developing it, and I hope someone finds me and is like, Gia,
Otherwise, you have YouTube, right? At the end of the day, you can all put it out on it.
You know, it would be I would hate for that to happen. I would hate for that to happen, because I need them to be seen. I need them to be seen by all kinds of audiences, and they deserve a room of people to watch and to understand. And so I really hope I can give them that.
Well, inshallah, you'll get your slot in one of the OTTs, and we'll all work towards that. Any help we can give while we struggle for our own work to be on OTTs. But, okay, so I want quickly to understand from you, Rashmi, you know, you are also working on another project called Conversations Matter and Devis, right? Damsels and Divas. Do you want to quickly talk about it? I want people to understand the work you all are doing, and I know you touched upon yours, Kireet, but I'll come to you. I would like to tell the audience what you're doing so they can also watch it and talk about it to, you know, people.
So I think Kireet and I are allies on that because I've been obsessed, like you said, Gia. You just need to get into that whole thing. So I've been very passionately involved with something that we would, in a phrase called redefining masculinity, because again, I think that's the conversation that's going on globally right now, because we have things like the man box and the manosphere and Andrew Tate, and we have all that happening. But we also have a lot of role models where a lot of change is happening. So I'm trying to really bring out the men who walk the talk, and they are working on, again, making the masculinity is not about becoming better men for women. That's very clear. It's about discovering what is masculinity, accepting certain stereotypical aspects of that, and beginning to change that globally. And so we've done a pilot, and we're now developing the rest of it, and again, working on you know, various formats. So just as you said, what is very important is the various formats. So, you know, I was recently, like we all are talking about funding, I was pitching for funding. And the question I was asked was, why do you want to do this? Is it to make, I hope there are lots of aspiring filmmakers here. And the question I was asked was, do you want to make this just to let the film go to festivals and win some awards and then, you know, tick box, I did this? Or is it because it's such a passion that you want to use it as a tool, like what's happening, to make that change, to continue the conversation, as we've called it, to create a movement, you know? So it's got to be far more than just making a film for the sake of making a film. And I think, as Kireet said, he's still, you know, got the film, The Invisible Visible, which is about the homeless. And I think that film did amazing, it had an amazing impact, even for the protagonist, in the legislations that have come around it. So I think that's what we are all doing, which is going beyond the craft of filmmaking. It's not just the craft. You know, you can use a phone and make a film. So that's really what is very important for me. So the Davies Damsels Divas was again about the representation of women on and off screen. But I might turn that around and say Davies Damsels and Divas ... says who? Is it the men who are slaughtering the women? Is it that male gaze what is it? So I think a lot of questions that I hope will be addressed and answered in the project. Not even answered, just raised.
So something to look forward to, but Kireet, quickly, invisible, visible, what should we expect? And what would you like this audience to kind of, take away from there?
For the invisible visible?
Yes.
Okay, so invisible visible basically is emanated from the thought that I came across this person who was working with the homeless, and I was astounded to know that there are 70 million people on the streets. That's more than the population of France. That's the number of people on the streets. And these are people who are not just invisibilized by us, that we walk on the streets and we don't really care about them, but the state also has locked them up. So there are anti-beggary laws, which is the 1959 anti-beggary law actually says that if you're poor and if you don't have any visible means of sustenance, then the state thinks that, the police and the force thinks that you don't have any sustainable means you have no means of sustenance, you will be incarcerated, you will be put in the jail on the suspicion of beggary. So you don't even need to be a beggar. So the people who are actually the thelawalas, the people who are the carts and many of the rickshaws and the taxiwalas, they sleep on the streets and they are picked up by the police and they are put in jail. And so the story is very, very sordid, because also what happened in Muzaffarpur, where 44 girls between 6 and 15 were being raped and tortured every single day in a shelter home that is under the protection of the state government in Bihar. And so these guys actually unearthed that. So that was the genesis of it. And and of course Rashmi has been the impact producer for that. So it's what is called an impact documentary, which is it's not just a documentary, but it's also a film that is meant to call for action, right? And the three aspects that the film talks about is the repealing or the entire abolishing the Anti-Beggary Act of 1959, setting up of shelters which the Supreme Court has given a mandate for, but the states are not moving in that direction. And the third is auditing those shelters, because that is very critical. If you don't audit those shelters, then you will have all kind of sexual violence happening against women and young girls and boys as well. So these three demands the film makes, and there was a huge progress that has been made in there. Like 16 states decided not to implement the anti-beggary law, and the government for the first time gave 500 crores and said these are our people. So they started recognizing them, and they started to have the project was taken up in 10 cities across India, and the film now is being used as a training tool for the people who are going to work with the homeless. So the film is being used for that as well. So in fact, we had a screening yesterday at the American consulate as well. So the film, although seen by very few people, but seen by the right constituency, the bureaucrats, and of course it needs to be seen by everybody, so I would encourage everybody to see it. It's called The Invisible Visible. It's available on YouTube, so I just put it on YouTube because I got frustrated with the platforms and I don't think we need them anymore. So I put it on YouTube, and you should see that it's a whole documentary, and it's really an eye-opener because it humanizes, it visibilizes the invisibles who are on the street.
Thank you so much, and I think this is probably the second film I'll watch on the homeless. The first one is a feature film which was made long time back, which was called Traffic.
Yes.
Correct, Madhur Bhandarkar's, right? But it's very important, and I know there are a few colleges who are here. If you would like screenings in your colleges, I don't know, I'm just taking the chance. Maybe you could write to some email ID and we could arrange for a screening?
Yeah, so about Traffic, I'd like to bring this up is that when I saw Traffic, after having been educated by some of the best minds who are actually working in this, obviously they are also featuring in my documentary, is that there is a lot of stereotyping that we do, that the people on the streets are on drugs, they have gangs and they are malingerers and this and that and all kind. Of course, there was some bit of empathy also towards them. But that is far away from the truth. Because I spent a lot of time traveling across India to shoot this. And so there is, and I'm not saying there are no gangs, and I'm not saying people in the streets are not taking drugs and all that, but that is just one way of looking at it, and this is predominantly, it is happening only because of the fact that the state has relinquished itself. It has just taken its hand out and said, okay, you go and die, you figure out what your life is. If you are found on the streets, we'll pack you in beggar's home, which is worse than jails. So the idea is that there is a lot of stereotyping happens specifically in Bollywood, because people just think that they want to do a research for a month and then they're done with it. I spent 4 years before I actually started making the film. So I spent 4 years just talking to the protagonists and the people regarding the thing. I read a lot of material before I started making it. So that's again a pitfall, is that when you have a film on a subject and it's not well researched, or it doesn't come from the right place, it can do more harm than good.
So invisible, visible, if you want to know more about the people who live on the streets outside your own homes, right? So I think we all must go and watch it, and thank you for putting it on YouTube. Otherwise, I don't know when we would have seen it if we kept waiting for OTTs. But quickly, I know there's no time, but before the last question, Insia, I just want to hear, you can take mine if you like. I just want you to share with everyone about your very recent film which you've released, and where can they watch it?
So it's not yet released. It's releasing on the 3rd of February. It's releasing on YouTube. We all YouTubers over here. It's a film called The Beginning. It's a fiction film. It's actually the first fiction to go out of Asia on female genital mutilation. I have no idea if you are aware of what it is, but if I'll simplify it, it's just how male circumcision happens. There is female circumcision in India, which is happening in a community of Dawoodi Bohras. I belong to that community. And for the last 10 years, I've been doing work on it and lived with it for as long as I've been alive. So the film is about, like Kireet said, right? It's not just a film, it's an impact film. And the campaign is about that the cut can stop with you. So what this film is about, not just creating awareness, but actually taking generations of trauma and putting a stop to it. When one woman, one mother decides not to cut her daughter, what happens next? So the film is about that, and yes, please do watch it. It is going to be released. That's the support that I'm looking for from everybody, and not just watching it, but also sharing it if possible, because we've been trying for almost now a decade to get laws into this country on FGM, which is very difficult, being that we are a country which has different, religions over here, unlike Africa, where everybody does it, right? So it's very difficult, and I think we are trying to push now the issue not just from the Bohra community's perspective, but also from a child rights perspective, because these are little girls that are cut, and it's not a surgery. It's not something that anybody goes with a blade and does the cut. Okay, so it's something that we need to all be aware of. So, yeah.
Thanks, Insia, and thanks for making this. There are a lot of these things that we do culturally or in our homes, in our small communities, which a lot of us don't know about, but they have big traumatic impact on children. I'm a survivor of child sexual abuse, so for me these things are very close to my heart. And I believe that sharing and watching is one, but if you can have these conversations, because you have young children in your homes, in your families, in your extended families, or in your communities, opening these conversations might raise a few eyebrows, but I've always noticed that people want to know what to do, how to react, how to talk, what can they do. They want to know, they don't know better. So please have these conversations if you can, and I keep on taking liberties with my panelists, but if you ever want to contact anyone to have this conversation or bring them on a bigger podium to talk about it to your people or your colleges, you can reach out to us at Safe City and we'll make that happen. And
also, can I just, one more thing to what you just said. So Kireet has made a very, very impactful film a long time ago called Komal, which is on child sexual abuse. I use that film to create awareness when I go into schools and colleges. I created a film called Tara Raju, which is again a puppetry animation video for smaller children. Please go on YouTube, get those films, and if you all have kids in your homes, please do show those films. I think that's where you can make a change. So, small steps.
Thanks, Insia. So we are going to come to the last question because clearly Krishella shifted from here to be closer to me and tell me to stop now. My last question to all of you is, one thing that you would like to share with the youth and with our audience who are either making films or are going to make films or who are the audience of these films. What is that one thing that you want to tell them to keep in mind while doing all this, which will bring an impact and do some social good in the community as well? I'll start with you, Kireet.
Okay, so I have a much broader philosophy. I don't look at films only. I look at purpose, and I look at what are we really wanting from our lives. What is the purpose of our lives? And there is a beautiful quote by Hafiz, the poet Hafiz, who says, something like, even after all these years, the sun doesn't tell the earth, you owe me. And look what a love like this can do. It can light up a whole world. The whole idea is that there is so much nature is giving to us. There's so much, we are born in nature, we'll die in nature. We've created these buildings and everything, and that's taken us away from who we are truly. But we're born naked, we'll die naked, and we'll be part of the earth, whether the elements. And it's important to understand who you are, and that the real purpose of life for me has been to give, to make sure that we leave the world at a better place than we started off at. And we, all of us, of course, are also responsible for global warming and traveling abroad and this and that and all that. So we're enjoying, but we're never really giving back. And so giving back is important, and whichever way you choose to do it, whether it's through films or through the work that you do or through helping a neighbor or helping larger communities, it doesn't matter. But idea is that how can I serve has to be a very predominant aspect or mantra for your life, that you need to constantly think about how can I help. And that is a very, very important thing. That will bring you happiness.
Thank you, Kireet. And I think a lot of communities also have this thing that one part of your salary or whatever you earn goes into giving back to the society as well. So very rightly said, and I love that poem that you recited. Thank you for that. Rashmi, you want to go next?
I think for those, these days everybody is a content creator because anybody with a smartphone is a content creator. So I think the question would be, why are you going to make that film? Dig deeper into why, which then brings the audience, because if it's something just as a selfie, that's okay. But if it's something that you want to talk about, then it's got to be the why, and the audience is very important. And to the audience, I would say that, since, I'm talking about the gender lens, wear a sort of lens when you watch the films. It's not only the story. There was a very interesting festival that was run by Lardli, which has the media awards. And I loved the title of that festival. It was called Dusra Chashma. So aap Dusra Chashma pehen ke dekhiye ke what is there beyond that story. What are the characters? When you watch a film, what is the filmmaker trying to say? As Kireet said, it's a wholesome experience, not just ke wo Salman bhai ke biceps hain ke nahi, and so I think film is a very, very important medium. I always say this, that my first lesson in social communications media, I was given a mantra by a Canadian theorist, which says the medium is the message. But this gentleman, Marshall McLuhan, had said media is the message, and someone misspelt it as medium is the massage. Because then it's that medium that massages your thoughts, your behavior, your values, and your attitudes. And I think in India we've got Bollywood and cricket as our two religions, so they're very important to be the right audience and the right filmmaker. So that would be what I would like to say.
Thanks, Rashmi, and that's super important. You know, I mean, I was talking to some people, and I was actually telling UNAOC when I was on the jury. I said, you know, in India, we need a film appreciation course to be mandatory in colleges, because there's so much content being putting out for you to consume that you probably don't know you're consuming something without being mindful about how to consume it. You know, you cannot stop creators from making films which will have violence or which will show stereotypical men being violent. But that doesn't mean all men have to be violent because Shah Rukh Khan trolled somebody or harrowed someone and stalked a woman, eventually got her, doesn't mean you'll also get her. And it's wrong. Stalking is wrong whether Shah Rukh Khan does it or whether you do it. So appreciating these films and understanding them in the right spirit is very important. So thanks for that, Rashmi. Gia, let's...
I think I would just say that create what you really want, make what you really want. It's okay if eventually not many people watch it. I also want to say that, and I think it's okay to put something like a little bit of you in what you make. And I think that's really important and something you should always do. And I think if it feels too far away from you, like what you're setting out to do, then find something in it that will hold your attention. Because if it's not holding your attention, it's perhaps not working yet. So just please remember that and only make when you really want to. Don't be forced to make, don't be pushed to make. Like, making doesn't always have to be like sometimes it is when you're not ready for it, but otherwise if you are, then you're just going to deep dive in. So take the time you need to make. There are many people making things, so you'll be fine. And I think for the viewer, perhaps pretty similar to what I think everyone is saying up here, but I think maybe I can talk about the kind of viewer like I yearn for, perhaps. Like I think a viewer who I yearn for, perhaps, is just a viewer who will really watch what I am trying to create or show without trying to always understand what it means. Thank
you. So for all aspiring filmmakers over here, I would say just try to make films that, you know, go beyond the obvious and are able to trigger those difficult dialogues, because that's important. Any film that can start a conversation, you know that you have probably hit the right notes. So just try to do that if possible. I know not all films and every film will have a message or should have a message, but if you can just think of it in the context of inclusivity and, you know, just keep adding those small, subtle, it's like hammering, you know, a big rock. If you just hammer at it every day a little bit, I think it will split open and you might just create something that is beautiful. So that's for the filmmakers over here. For the ones that are watching, I think, like everybody else said, be mindful and understand the difference between real and real. That's very important. If you do understand that, then see how you can take it out there and, you know, talk about it. I think dialogues, that's all we can have, no? Not just the dialogues that are on the screen, but the dialogues that we create between ourselves. So yeah.
Thanks, Insia. And you know, there is, so there's a film that I had made a year and a half back with Ogilvy, which was called Bollywood versus Bioscope Stories, where we picked up some 3 very famous, DDLJ being one of them, films, and we got some graphic designers to create scenes, recreate scenes, where actually the heroes are doing things which are criminal in India. And eventually they get, like Shah Rukh gets Kajol, right, in DDLJ, but in our film, when we showed it, he's behind bars. So we put them in real bioscopes. You know, the old time you used to have bioscopes where you can peep in and they'll play the music and play it like this and you could actually see the movie go past. Okay, some of you probably don't know, you can go to Google and check it out later. But we took it into these small towns and cities and got people to see those 3 films that we had recreated there. And we asked them, what do you think now? Are you going to do what Shah Rukh Khan is doing, you know? And they're like, but there's happy stalking also, right? What if the girl likes it, but she's quiet? That actually normally means yes, right? And so these conversations, yeah, so it was very interesting. And when they realize it's a law, it's a crime under the law. They actually said, oh, we didn't know that. Because Shah Rukh Khan did it, we thought it's okay. आप हीरो को करते हुए दिखा रहे हो who's not going behind bars in the film. They're thinking this is what the real life is also, right? So just wanted to say that film is also out there and you can watch it because it's won a few awards across the globe and it's not only Bollywood, it's also some films abroad. But the idea is the people promoting these films or this kind of culture are also those who are giving these movies the opportunity to be blockbusters, and the films who probably make sense now don't even get onto OTT. Some of the films which should be seen. So as audiences, can we take a pledge? We'll watch 2 commercial films and we'll watch at least half of something which is not so commercial. You know, just so that you can give filmmakers who are like us, who are trying to create that other parallel cinema, a chance to at least tell you these stories.
I also think that the segregation needs to end. I think the objective should be to watch stories that are, have good storytelling. Commercial art, I think we now have overlapped over that, we don't really have those like in the olden days, how we had a very, very categoric, this is commercial and this is art. And while Rashmi was talking about Salman Khan's biceps, I was just imagining what if Salman Khan's bicep actually said stop CSA, stop FGM, use the body on, for something nice.
Yeah, so these influencers can do a lot. Like Akshay Kumar also did a few films with Toilet and, Padman and all, but also he's done other films where he's run after women and, taken their films. Even in Toilet, he took pictures of that girl without her consent, and that's one of the 3 films we put in the bioscope. But I know we are running short of time, and I always keep my dearest friend, Manjushree, for the last, because she's a classical singer, like you all know, and I always try to get her to send us off with music in our ears and the sounds of what emotions it brings to us. So I'm going to ask Manju if you could.
While we were having this conversation, I was badgering Supreet ki, batao, what is it that I'm going to be speaking, or what is it? She said, no, I want you to just bring the musical element. And I said, yes, that's something that I think during one of our last year, panel discussions last year, this had come up as well. So what I'm going to end with is basically give you the power of music and show you what it does. Actually, 2 different taranas. Taranas are compositions that have nonsense, non-meaningful words. They don't have meaning. But if you hear them, you'll make your own meaning. And that is coming from the power of the notes or the ragas. So I'm going to just sing 2 lines of a composition that I've created. It's in Rag Nand. And I want you to just probably close your eyes and listen to it perhaps and see the power of music and why films using right kind of music really hit a strong note in the viewers' hearts. So, Dim ta de re na ta da re da ni, dim ta de re na ta da re da ni, der na da ni, da ni da ni, der na da ni, da ni da ni. O dere dim ta da ni, o dere dim ta da ni. O dere dani 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 dim ta dere na. Now if you notice this, it has given you an emotion which I don't want to decide what that might be. But the same lines, if I can sing as dim ta dere na ta dere dani, dim ta dere na ta dere dani, der na dani dani dani, der na dani dani dani, o dere dim ta dani, o dere dim ta dani, o dere dani 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 dani, dim ta dere na ta dere dani. So it's the same composition, it's just the way it is presented. And then we have na dir dir dim ta na dere na ta na dere na, na dir dir dim ta na dere na dere na. Der na ta dere dani dim ta na tom ta na dir dir dim
tanana tana dere na, tanana dere na, na dir dir dim, tanana tana dere na, tanana dere na, na dir dir dim, tanana tana dere, na dir dir dim, tanana tana dere, na dir dir dim, tanana tana dere na dere na
And after this, I always like to say, okay, go in silence. Just keep that music in your ears. But thank you, Manju. You always bring this calm, you know, after all these stormy conversations and things which kind of move us and take us through an upheaval of emotions. It's always nice to end up with a note, a classical Hindi note. So thank you. And thank you all of you for being here. And watching our movies and listening to all of us. I hope you take something back. We are here. If anybody has any question, we can keep 5 minutes for questions. Anybody? And it's okay if you don't have it. Okay, yeah. Go ahead.
I don't have a question in particular, but I just wanted to say that I am currently in my 4th year, and as a student of liberal arts is a degree where you get to choose from a wide array of subjects. You can also choose anthropology, you can choose math, you can choose science, you can choose business, you can choose media, you can choose film. So in my first year, when I did not have a choice, I took film appreciation as an elective and not a compulsory course. And that just taught me not just different types of cinemas, but such different types of viewership patterns, how we look at things, exactly what we've been discussing here. And I feel like it's so important to take such courses, because that gave me such a perspective about different types of sensitivities that we need to take care of whenever we're watching a film, and how important it is to make sure to keep in mind that these are the things that that these things are very, very important to consider when you're watching a film. So I really think that every films or every college must have a film appreciation course, exactly what you said. I completely agree with you, ma'am.
Thanks, Muskan.